Good afternoon, good time zone and warm greetings to wherever you are in the world. This is Amelia, aka Puffin. Let's make some progress. Yeah, I'm filming this on Tuesday and I am currently preparing for getting back into my weekly routines. The one where I have a 9-to-5 job, though it's actually more like 8-to-4. But it's been a good day. I've had great company. As in, I've been listening to my new playlists that I have composed using you guys' suggestions. And I will keep adding to them if anyone is still catching up to the videos. Though I have also been warned that maybe this wasn't that great of an idea because some songs can be a little spoilery. But I trust you guys' judgment. I know you wouldn't put songs on this playlist just to try to spoil me for something. Like, songs are too versatile anyway. I don't think I'd be able to find exact plot points from a vibe, you know? I think I'm good, but I don't think I'm that good. But anyways, the links will be down in the description if you want to have a look at what everyone suggested. And who knows, maybe you too will find something new to add to your Hwalian playlists. I listened through both of them preparing for this video as well. You guys have such great taste. Thank you guys so much for sharing. And furthermore, thank you so much for your patience while I learn all these new terms and, you know, cultural components that might be very typical to Chinese works or Danmei works in general that I just don't know yet. Because I am still very new to this genre. So a lot of the terms are just still not, you know, stuck to my brain. So thank you for being patient, for repeating stuff that you've already told me, so that I can keep on top of things as I go along. I also have a new update for the dolls. The Ghost King mini dolls are on their way, and one of them apparently just cleared customs, and I didn't check which one. So why don't you guys join me for a bet? Just for fun, of course. Let me know in a comment which Ghost King mini doll you think will arrive first. The Hwachang version or the Sandong version. Once the first one arrives, I will unbox him and let him meet Lian Lian, while the second arrival will just have to stay in the box for a bit until the next video, which at this rate could be a long time. Oh my lord, this poor little Ghost King. Okay, I swear I won't be abusing my Ghost Kings, but we're doing this for safety reasons, right? We want all mini dolls in this household to feel safe and secure. But okay, let's recap our last read along. So last time we discovered Earthmaster in Hwachang's Chamber of Secrets, and then we discovered that he's not the only one keeping secrets. AKA the Fangxin reveal, AKA the second half of season 2, which is about to pop off. Like, it's about to get good. Well, bad. But that's good. Like, it's gonna be fucking terrible, and I've already cried about this a couple of times, but it's gonna be great. Now, again, the adaptation is just really, really good. But that is not to say that there haven't been changes, and I do have a couple of really notable ones. First and foremost, Sholian's landing. I was lied to. Like in the Donghua, when Sholian falls down after they rescued the Earthmaster, he falls down onto the floor of the armory, and I was told that in the novel, Hwachang gives Sholian a softer landing. But it literally said right here that he landed on something hard. Okay, jokes aside, I knew that was gonna happen though. In the book, Sholian falls into Hwachang's lap to give us an extra layer of tension, I suppose. Like on top of all the tension we already have in the scene, and you know what? I'll take it. Does it serve the plot or change anything whatsoever about this scene? Admittedly, no. But I personally enjoyed it. I think we can have some accidental surprise physical touch as a treat. Just let that sudden closeness just linger between the characters and with the reader as we just continue on as if nothing happens. Like, we can take a little teasing with the promise of what is to come. Looking at you, Volume 4. Looking at you. Your time too will come. The second very notable change is, well, how extremely more explicit we are about how hurt Sholian is. That arm was mangled. That's the actual word used in the translation. Which takes us back to the question we kind of started discussing in the Donghua. Was Hwachang going to kill Long Chen Cho? So he has already been merciful once. Like when Shilian comes to Paradise Manor, he says that he will erase his debts, I suppose, for Gaga's sake. As long as he doesn't show his face again, and so he's already done that. And now he's back. Like he has already told Shilian pretty explicitly what he intends to do if shit like this happens. On page 106 about heavenly officials in Ghost City. If they don't stir up trouble, then I don't care, and if they do, then even better, because then I can wipe them all out at once. But whether or not he really means to go for the kill in this moment? Maybe. Like, I don't think he had any qualms about doing it. And Shilian certainly believes so, or at least he can see the difference between them and their power. Like, so far we don't actually have any stories of Hua Chang directly killing a heavenly official. So for all we know, he might have, pulled back at the last moment, assured defeat, but not outright killing Lang Chencho. But he's already said these things to Shilian, so Shilian wouldn't have any reason to believe that he would pull his punches. But that leads us to a follow-up question. Why did Shilian choose to interfere? And the first answer is to save Lang Chencho, of course, duh. And as we're going into the next arc and we discover the relationship between the two, that becomes kind of obvious, right? That Shilian would want to save Lang Chencho, not just because he's a fellow heavenly official, but because he's Lang Chencho, the prince he once taught. The prince he once saved. A couple of times, actually. But guys, this is twofold, because yes, I do believe that Shilian interferes to save Lang Chencho, but I also believe that Shilian interferes to protect Hua Chang. See, literally 3 pages before this incident, before Shilian steps in, this is his train of thoughts. Like, Hua Chang has just told him that Earthmaster is his subordinate, or was his subordinate, and Shilian is thinking thus. Never mind the politics behind it. If Ming Yi was to remain imprisoned and tortured, all heaven would break loose if he actually died at Hua Chang's hands. The world would be gripped by absolute chaos. If that day came, no one would be spared. And after thinking all this through, Shilian could only say, I understand that the fault is ours, but Sun Lang, I still hope you will let us go this time around. In other words, Shilian is concerned that if Sun Lang ends up killing the Earthmaster, there's gonna be heaven to pay, I suppose. And never mind that Hua Chang is really, really powerful, this is still concerning, right? If a heavenly official was killed by a Ghost King directly in such an incident as this, perhaps a very powerful god, say John Woo, would be forced to make a move. And perhaps heaven really would try to go after Hua Chang. Whether they'd be successful or not is not the point here. The point is, Shilian wants to save Hua Chang, protect Hua Chang from all this trouble. And I suppose we can say that Shilian kind of got it his way. Until Lang Chencho reveals his dirty little secret. Now, those were my major points, but I do have some other thoughts from the chapters we've just read. The first one being about Hua Chang's suspicion of Lang Ying. Why? Well, I think it's important to remember again that Hua Chang is from Shanle, and then ask the question, did Hua Chang ever see or meet Bai Wuxiang? I assume that Hua Chang wasn't, Ghost King status or anything while Bai Wuxiang was still around. I am making an educated guess because of the timeline that he probably died before Bai Wuxiang was killed by John Woo. But chances are that he still knows about Bai Wuxiang in some form or another, right? So maybe there's something about Lang Ying that has him suspicious of that whole connection. Which leads me to another question, which is, can a Ghost King sense other Ghost Kings? Like, is there something about a Ghost King that is familiar to another Ghost King if they meet? Because as Hua Chang said in Volume 1, in the last chapter of Volume 1, Chapter 11, only Ghost Kings, are at his level. The other ghosts don't really have the right to talk to him even. So like, is there a difference here? Something that makes them capable of recognizing each other? Either way, Hua Chang's suspicion of Lang Ying has me a bit. I think Hua Chang knows something that I don't. I hate it when Hua Chang knows things that I don't. I think we need to rectify this, which means that I need to read more, of course. Working on it. Another thing we do get a little bit more of is Shilian's perception of heaven and also his loyalty to heaven, which is really interesting to me. Because when he and She Qingxuan are discussing the banished previous god of the West, Shilian says as follows: if one no longer belongs to the heavens, then it's their choice where they go. About the possibility of a banished god being in Hua Chang's employ. And, you know, Shilian did not get in touch with heaven during his 800-year sabbatical. This in spite of Zhenwu directly asking him to, as he says when they meet again in Volume 2. But now Shilian kind of seems to express that he feels obligated to. Like, he reasons that Zhenwu is in a bit of a pinch, he had no choice but to ask Shilian to do this, but he himself still had a choice to say no. I think he said yes, also because he wants to be involved. If there's something to do with Hua Chang, he wants to be able to protect Hua Chang and show him his support, I suppose. Make sure that any judgment of Hua Chang isn't as one-sided as it is when heaven is the one making the judgment. But yeah, I think that Shilian's kind of perspective on being a heavenly official is, okay, now he is a part of heaven, and that means that he kind of has to do these things. He has to answer to the heavenly emperor, and so on, so on. While before he was ascended the third time, he was just like, no, I'm not doing it. And with this as a background for our discussions, I think his little rebellious acts are even more fun, actually. But just something to keep in mind, I think his loyalty is really like a bit squared here, right? Which at the same time is at odds with him making BFFs with a prominent ghost king. Anyway, just a note. I also want to mention just the reactions from the other gods as our crew arrives back in heaven at the Divine Palace, the Palace of Divine Might. Like, the book makes it so prominent that Fangxin goes immediately to Shilian when he sees that he is hurt. He doesn't even care that the Earthmaster is literally out cold, he goes straight to Shilian. Mooching. Yeah, the book makes it more clear yet again that his actions are way more complicated. And again, it's like some of his actions are just so contradictory. Again, he shows up as the second person to show up. And again, I am pretty convinced that he also started moving after Shilian dropped his message into the communication array. A bit after Fangxin, because he is again a bit more wary, a bit more hesitant, but he still went, I think, when he heard Shilian. So again, like Mooching, you're the second person to show up, but you still do these things to stoke the fire, so to speak. Because his actions are not simply to defend Shilian, it's also because he wants to stir another sort of reaction from Lang Chenchuo, make him go that extra mile in his accusations. Either way, just filing that away is another thing that Mooching does that just irks me and makes me want to open his brain and dig into it. Shout out again to the line about the sword and the flower, because holy shit. Shilian is such a badass, and honestly, like, we kind of do see it, but I think that this scene and She Qingxuan's reaction to this whole thing was super, super important. Sword in one hand, flower in the other, She Qingxuan had forgotten that Shilian had ascended because of his sword. Oh my fucking god. It is such a good sentence. And it really, really helps to put into perspective just how darn skilled Shilian is. I mean, aside from the fact that he deflected a blow from both a heavenly official and a ghost king. And lastly, back to the real problem. Earthmaster. Like, this is bothering me, this detail that we're learning. Because, like, isn't it really fucking convenient that no one knows the Earthmaster? I mean, yes, he's low-key, and that is probably one of the reasons why John Woo picked him as his spy. But oh my god, like I am so confused about this, and I feel like I'm going insane with this whole, oh, he's just Xia Qingxuan's very introverted friend. Because seriously, how the fuck do you do that? How are you best friends with the Windmaster Xia Qingxuan, the it girl of heaven, when you're so introverted that no one has even seen your fucking face? Like, the worst thing about this is that I don't know what it means and it's giving me a headache. And like, I need another clue so that it can stop. And I think Hua Cheng is going to tell me. Hua Cheng, can you please tell us why Shillian should not get involved in this? Because we're gonna get involved with this. Because we are next best besties with Xia Qingxuan now. Which means we're probably gonna be helping Xia Qingxuan when Xia Qingxuan needs to help his boyfriend, best friend, once it's time to serve up the secret beef. And that's it from me for now. But before we go into the Fangxin arc, we are going to be answering a question from the Temple of Corkboards. This time from Gibby. Oh, hey Lian then. Did you find Erming? I know you haven't held him in a while, you're probably just looking for him. Would you like to sit with me while we answer the questions? We can have a look at it together. Okay, so the last winner of our little betting competition over at the Temple of Corkboards, where my followers bet on how long it's gonna take me to film a video, Gibby, Pink Yeti, won yet again, which puts Gibby in the lead on the Hua Cheng levels of luck table as a 2-time winner. And this is a massive black book, so yeah, let's get into it. You know the drill, Puffin, that I do. Wait. Oh no, once you've opened there are 2 black boxes. I didn't even finish reading the first one, but I was about to tap the second one, but I saw open the second one. Okay, so this is a 2-part question. Let's do it. Plot twist, this is a 2-part game. Part 1. As goddess of corkboards, you've been gifted your own pair of good luck dice. What would your rules be? For numbers 2 to 12, they could be mischievous like Hua Cheng's teleportation array, or ridiculous. Maybe a roll transforms them into an animal. The power is in your hands. Oh no, I have to, oh, okay. So basically my own chamber of secrets, except, doesn't have to be a room necessarily, it just has to be something that happens. I still feel like it has to be kind of like a room, like you go into it and something happens. Like we saw in when Mooching and Fangxin used the dice and ended up in a room that was like their worst fear or whatever. Okay, let's try to think of something fun. I'll have to make a list and okay. Let's do it. Okay. So I made myself a little list. I have no idea actually what kind of game we're playing. So I went a little bit over the place with it. Like some of it is just directly from TGCF. There's a few like fan fiction tropes in here. And then just some silly ones. So Puffin's little lucky dice. My little chamber of secrets. Obviously, we do need a grand prize. So if you roll the right number, which, just to be contrary to Hua Cheng, I've decided that rolling snake eyes is the right number. Also, you have to take probability into account. 2 and 12 are the least likely combinations you're going to get because you're going to need 2 1s or 2 6s. So those are like the lucky ones, right? So yes, if you do roll snake eyes, you do get the grand prize, which is a door that leads into my living room. You'll get to have tea and coffee with me at the Temple of Corkboards. Admire my board. We can take a corkboard selfie, I suppose. So yes, that is the correct dice rolling here. You need to do 2 1s and come hang out with me. As for the rest of the list, as in Hua Cheng's teleportation array, you end up in this place and then you have to go through the place and find the next way, the next door, in order to progress, right? So if you roll a 3, congratulations, you have inhaled a truth serum. Good old-fashioned fanfiction trope, tried and tested for maximum inconvenient confession of feelings. Or other, secrets, I suppose. So this one is obviously better if you're together with someone, it's more fun that way. So let's say that if you go in alone, you do end up with like a illusion of your best friend or something. And you have to walk together with them through this maze, but you don't know that they're an illusion, right? Number 4, you roll for your greatest desire, aka a room that you don't actually want to leave. A tried and trusted fairy tale trope this time. Roll for 5, you get turned into a child. I love fanfictions where you turn characters into children. I suppose the room you have to end up in is somewhere where a child is not, you know, at an advantage, like a big crowd or something. That sounds about right. You roll a 6, you turn rule 63, aka you get to swap your gender. To some, not an issue. To others, their biggest dream. And to then some, their biggest fucking fear. And if that isn't your biggest fear, number 7, I'm just gonna do that, the same one as TGCF has, your deepest fear. 8, read aloud one of the great tales written about you. Yeah, basically your dice get confined, and the only way that you can get your dice back so that you can, you know, roll for the next door is to read out loud one of the stories written about you, a fanfiction about you. If you're alone, you have to read it aloud for like a group of strangers, I guess, which is less fun than if you go into this place with someone. I feel like you always need to go with someone. It's more fun that way. And once you've read out loud one of the stories about you, you get your dice back and you can continue on. Number 9, this one is just mischievous. You have to walk through a large festival crowd, but every other instrument that's playing is a little bit out of tune. That's it. Just walk through the festival until you can find the next door. See, I know that to some this is just gonna be an annoyance, but that's the whole point, right? 10. Body swap. Kind of, sort of. You walk through the door, you take on the appearance of the person you like the most. Again, way more fun if you're going together with someone. Maybe there's a weakness to this. Maybe I've designed these rooms with too much TGCF in mind. Anyway, 11. You go into a room full of mini-dolls of yourself. One of them is an imposter, and the imposter will have the dice inside of it. So you have to find a mini-doll that is not a mini-doll of you, basically. Oh, and they all move around. And lastly, if you do roll a 12, you do get turned into an animal. I just stole that one from you, Gibby. I was running out of ideas. And you have to run around this area where your animal form is probably not the best place to be. Probably a city or something. And you know you have to take care of your dice at the same time. Yeah. Which can be harder if you're, say, a dog. Easier if you're like someone with more grip, like a stout. I think Shirley would excel is what I'm saying. Okay, so I might have messed up this game. Like, I don't know if my things have... my list is anti-Gibby game, but we'll just have to see, right? Okay, we're ready for the next part. Let's open the second box. Alas, you've been interrupted from answering corkboard prayers. 3 heavenly officials have infiltrated your palace and have stolen your precious dice. Okay. They're using them to snoop in your rooms, trying to discover your secrets. Each person rolls the dice 2 times. Oh my gosh, and I have a list of people and what they roll. Their fates rest in your hand according to your rules and what happens to each of them. Oh my lord. Okay. Let's go. Let's do it. So the first person on my list is Shouqing. Shouqing, I thought we were friends. Why are you breaking into my palace? And he's breaking in along with Mooching and Pei Ming. Oh my gosh. Well, this kind of works out. Like if they go together, it's more fun that way, right? They kind of have to. They only have 1 set of magical dice. Holy shit. Well, this could take a while. Let's go through it together. Let's start with Shouqing's 3. Which is my Truth Serum one, oh my lord. Now this is gonna be so funny because imagine Shouqing, Mooching, Pei Ming, they're going through this together, right? So from Shouqing and Pei Ming, I mean, they're just gonna be saying things about each other that they already would say about each other. Though perhaps with less filtering. Shouqing has like no love for Pei Ming, and I think Pei Ming is like a little bit like, well, my best friend's little brother is a little shit sometimes. So there's like this animosity in between there. However, Mooching likes to be more subtle, you know, in his approaches. Like he will sting you, but he will do it in a way that you're a little bit confused about. Now this happens, and suddenly mooching is like way more direct in all his fucking insults, which is probably how they realize that something is wrong, right? So in this situation, mooching is actually going to be the one who suffers the most. Because once they've kind of sussed out what is going on and he just keeps answering, you know, every question, he's the one with most secrets to let loose, more or less. Because, you know, Xia Qingxuan is so, you know, upfront about things. Pei Ming, I mean, his secrets are all over heaven. Are they really secrets if everyone talks about them? But mooching has shit that he wouldn't want to say, which turns the situation into, well, Xia Qingxuan and Pei Ming might learn something about mooching that he would rather not have anyone know. I can write a shit ton of fanfictions on this premise alone. It's gonna be great. Okay, so when they clear the truth serum room, mooching is obviously pissed because he may or may haven't let out a secret, and it may or may not have been something about what he actually feels about General Nanyang's pectorals. So he rolls next, and he rolls a 9, which is the one where they have to go through this festival where like every other instrument is out of tune. So it's fine. They're gonna be annoyed. They're gonna be walking in awkward silence. But hey, they need the time to kind of digest everything, I suppose. It's not the worst roll. It's not the worst roll. It could have been better. It could have been worse, right? But in comes Pei Ming, because he's the next one to roll, and he rolls a 4, which is your greatest desire. It's just, you know what it's gonna be. It's just gonna be, yeah. It's gonna be so dumb. Either way, wherever we're gonna end up, it's gonna be, I think Xia Qingxuan and mooching are just gonna be like, well, we're just gonna leave then. And I think that in the end, Pei Ming will reluctantly follow along because he has morals. He has a job to do, which is apparently infiltrate my palace. Okay, but yes, I don't have to say anymore, I think. Xia Qingxuan rolls, and he rolls an 11. So we walk into a room full of Xia Qingxuan mini-dolls. I don't think there is a Windmaster one, but maybe a fan-made one. And they're jumping around making whirlwinds or something. It's cute, slightly disturbing, kind of fun. They sometimes switch between their male and female forms to make it even harder to figure out who's the imposter, which is actually the mini-dolls' downfall, because once they turn into the female forms, Pei Ming quite easily figures out which one is the false one. I'm just saying, I think he has an eye for detail. Mooching rolls again and turns into a child, which could have been extremely funny, except I think that it's going to be very sad. Oh no. Okay, so Xia Qingxuan and Pei Ming have to take care of tiny mooching. And I don't know what tiny mooching was like, but we do know that his father was an executed criminal, and that he was probably from the slums, you know? So out comes another secret that mooching probably doesn't want anyone in heaven to know. Oh, he's having such a bad time with this. I'm so sorry, mooching, I've done this to you. Well, at least he's with 2 people who I trust to actually keep that secret. I mean, Pei Ming might choose to use it to his advantage at some point, for all I know. But I think Xia Qingxuan will just be, you know, a bit whatever about it. And in a kind way. Also, Windmaster has experience with taking care of children now because he's been stuck babysitting Sholian's children. He can take care of mooching for a little bit. And watch the big surprise be that Pei Ming is actually pretty good with kids. Like, I don't know if he ever intended on having them. He doesn't seem like he was ever a father, like ascended at 20-something. Might have been, I don't know, he was busy fighting wars though. Or maybe the opposite. I imagine that if mooching's father was a bit of a sore point, maybe Windmaster needed to be like in his female form for mooching to, you know, allow them to take him with them to find the door to go into the next room. Either way, the last roll this time around is for Pei Ming. And Pei Ming rolls a 7, which I assigned for your deepest fear, which is the same as in TGCF. So what happens is, they walk into the same room as last time when Pei Ming rolled for a 4, your deepest desires. Except, this time, whenever Pei Ming tries to talk to a woman, it doesn't work out. Every single one of them just looks down their noses and then they walk away. Rejection, 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 all over the place. Which means that the Palace of Corkboards remains protected, as no one made it to my coffee and tea party. Except for Sholian, he still had some luck left from Huachang. And none of my secrets were sussed out by my infiltrators. I am so sorry, guys. You should have just asked. Though I have no idea what exactly you'd be looking for. The plot of TGCF? Yeah, that's what they were looking for. They were looking for the plot of TGCF. So thank you, Gibby, for this fun game. I imagine this is a fun game that we could actually play in the server as well. Like we could just pick characters and actually roll some dice and see what happens. And then we can write little fanfiction snippets out of it. Anyway, this was so fun, and if you would like to write me a question or a challenge like this, then what you need to do is join my Discord server and also become a follower over at the Temple of Corkboards by donating to my coffee. Here is our coffee board, and I have a couple of updates for it today. First of all, I'd like to welcome Dragon Love to the Temple of Corkboards. Thank you so much for your donation, and I hope you enjoyed these videos. And another heart to go up on the board, this time from Maru. Thank you so much for your donation. And that is the board for this time. Which means that with all my tasks finished, we can finally get to what we're actually here for, and that is making another dent in this book. Let's get to reading. Okay, I am actually hoping to make quite a bit of progress today, but we'll see how it goes. Because I did a little bit of a calculation here, and there's about 110-ish pages left of this arc, this book. Not this volume, but like the book, before we start what happens after season 2, aka what is new to me. So if I did a session of about 50 pages and then one of about 60 pages, that would finish up what is season 2. And if I remember correctly, if I do the first half of these chapters, that's gonna put me at exactly 50 more pages. And it seems that's gonna be like 1, 2-ish chapters, 3 chapters, I'm not sure. I'm not actually looking at what's in here, I'm just looking at the page numbers. Yeah, so I'm starting out today a little bit crazy ambitious, but honestly, the most important part is to just enjoy as we read, right? So if you're reading along with me, grab your copy and let's get ready to read chapter 19. And if you're just listening, enjoy. Chapter 19. Enraged Nanyang fistfight with difficult Xuanzheng. Xuanzhen? There's a G at the end here. Is that a typo? Gosh darn it, books. I hope they changed that for the hardcover edition. Although the words were said casually, gasps could be heard from all around. Oh yeah, this is after Sholian goes like, no reason but fight me and you will surely die. Okay, I see now. Many of the martial gods had the same thought. You're nothing more than a powerless rubbish god. How could you be so shameless as to tell Long Chencho, the one martial god of the East, fight me and you will surely die? What arrogance! It was like he asked to be banished because fighting Long Chencho was beneath him. Absolute bullshit. Oh my god. These heavenly officials are so dumb. And yet Long Chencho didn't seem to think he was exaggerating at all. I already said life and death don't matter. I don't need you to let me off easy. Shelian ignored him and reiterated his request to Junwu. Please, my lord, banish me to the lesser realm. Shi Qingxuan suddenly raised his hand. Wait, I have more to say. Speak, Windmaster, Junwu said. Everyone here seems to think His Highness Shanle assumed the name Fangxin and spilled the blood of Yong'an royalty for revenge. But if it was revenge, then why did he let the Crown Prince of Yong'an, His Highness Taihua, go? Logically, someone carrying out an act of vengeance would want to cut down the Crown Prince most of all, am I wrong? It wasn't that no one had thought of this detail, but no one had thought it was necessary to voice it. Now that the Windmaster had taken the lead in doing so, some nodded their heads in agreement. Shi Qingxuan continued. His Highness and I haven't known each other for long, but I did see with my own eyes him fighting head-on against the scimitar Ming to protect His Highness Taihua. Chencho, if he felt hatred for the Yong'an monarchy, why would he be willing to risk his life and body to defend you against the blade? When Fangxin and Muqing heard that Sholian had faced Ming head-on, they both stared at him. There was a hushed grumbling of maybe he just felt guilty, but Shi Qingxuan immediately raised his voice to drown out the whispers. That was the weapon of misfortune, you know. The cursed blade itself. So I think this whole business is highly suspect. I'm so envious that His Highness has gained Lord Windmaster's protection and is being defended so earnestly, Pei Ming said. Too bad our little Pei wasn't so fortunate. General Pei, don't muddy the waters, Shi Qingxuan said. Can we even compare little Pei's case to this? I saw him commit crimes with my own eyes, and I heard with my own ears when he admitted to those crimes. How is that different from what's happening here? Pei Ming argued. His Highness Taihua saw Shi Lian commit crimes with his own eyes, and he heard him admit to those crimes with his own ears. How is that any different? This little shit. Shi Qingxuan grew furious and was about to argue back when Shi Lian seized him. Lord Windmaster, thank you, I am in your debt, but there's no need. Shi Qingxuan hadn't thought of a good comeback for Pei Ming yet, so he only pointed at him, unable to get any further words out. Finally, Junwu spoke, his tone tranquil. Everyone, please calm yourself. His voice wasn't particularly loud, very serene actually, yet everyone within the Palace of Divine Might heard his words clearly, and they all moved back to their designated positions. Once the hall settled down, Junwu spoke again. Taihua, your actions have always been impulsive. When situations arise, one must not be rash. Listen with a cool head, assess, and then evaluate once you know the whole story. Lang Chencho lowered his head to heed the lesson. Junwu continued. Shanle refuses to give us that full story, so his request for banishment is denied. He will be detained in the palace of Shanle, and I will personally interrogate him. The two of you shall not meet until I do so. It was a conclusion no one had expected. Junwu had actually shielded Shi Lian, the laughingstock of the three realms, who had neither temples nor devotees nor merits. And this is kind of what I was saying last time as well. Like, yes, this all comes down to what Junwu chooses to do, and putting him in house arrest is a decision to delay, right? And is therefore, in fact, protecting Shi Lian. Until a plan could be devised. Of course, he didn't count on the kidnapping, but well, if it works out. Lang Chencho was the martial god who ruled the East. If he was unhappy with the verdict, then what a losing business this would be. Even so, Junwu chose to shield Shi Lian. Didn't that mean he was still very much in the emperor's favor? Yeah. Many of the officials now saw which way the wind was blowing and decided that, going forward, they wouldn't publicly say the words laughingstock of the three realms. Oh my fucking god. So now that they've confirmed that Shi Lian has backing, they will not say these things out loud. Okay. Shi Qingxuan let out a sigh of relief and loudly praised Junwu for his wisdom. Lang Chencho, on the other hand, only stared intently at Shi Lian. Whatever my lord wishes to learn from his questioning, he is free to try, but whatever the conclusion, I will still duel him. With that, Lang Chencho bowed to Junwu, then turned and left the hall. At the wave of Junwu's hand, a pair of martial officials came forward to escort Shi Lian away. As they passed by Shi Qingxuan, Shi Lian spoke quietly to him. Lord Windmaster, thanks for everything, but if you really do want to help me, don't say any more on my behalf. Instead, can I ask you to do two things for me? Shi Qingxuan was still feeling guilty about fanning the fire that burned down Paradise Manor, and he wished dearly that Shi Lian would ask him for 100 things. What do you need? The boy I brought up here with me is in the side palace. Please take care of him, Shi Lian said. A trivial matter. What's the second thing? Shi Qingxuan said. If General Pei decides he wants to make things difficult for Banyu in the future, please help her out. Of course, Shi Qingxuan replied. I won't let Pei Ming get his way. Where is she? I've hidden her in a small pickle jar in my Puchi shrine. If you can, please air her out on occasion, Shi Lian said, to an ellipsis answer. After allowing Shi Lian to thank the Windmaster, the two heavenly officials brought him to the palace of Shanle. Please, Your Highness, they said courteously as they excused themselves. Shi Lian bowed his head. Thanks for the trouble. Stepping through the front gates, Shi Lian closed the doors behind him. Looking around, it was all as he expected. all as he remembered. The palace's appearance and all its rooms and facilities were exactly the same as his previous palace of Chandler. The last time he passed by, he didn't enter. He would never have guessed that the first time he set foot in here would be due to a house arrest. Not the best sign. But after so much excitement over the past few days, Shirley felt drained. He passed out immediately. Okay, so we actually got to have a little bit of a break. I love that for him. Yeah, it's been a thing. There's been a lot. He dreamt of many things. He seemed to be meditating with his eyes closed, and when he blinked his eyes open, he found himself sitting upright before a desk. His black robes flowed on the floor in layers around him, and on his face there was a cold, heavy mask. Okay, so we're actually getting a little bit of that, the flashback sequence as a memory, dream memory from Shillian. I'm actually very excited about that. When he looked down, the sight before him was a young boy sprawled over a desk. The boy appeared to be 14 or 15 years of age and was dressed sumptuously. His form strummed with life, but he was fast asleep all the same. He shook his head and walked over, bending slightly. He knocked on the desk with his knuckles. "Your Highness." Maybe it was because of that cold mask, but even his voice was cool. The boy woke up with a start. When he looked up and saw him, he jolted and sat upright immediately in horror. State Preceptor!" He said, "You fell asleep again. Transcribe thou dating 10 times as punishment." The Crown Prince cried out in dismay. Shifu. So I think I know this one because of Kung Fu fucking Panda. That's what they call the master, Shifu. The red panda master, Shifu. So I'm guessing this is a case of naan bread, like it's master. The Crown Prince cried out in dismay. "Shifu, please no! Why don't you have me run 10 laps around the palace as punishment instead? Transcribe it 20 times. Do it now and try to write nicely." The Crown Prince seemed to fear him, and he sat up properly to start copying. Shillian then sat back in his original position and continued to meditate. In truth, everyone in the palace was a little scared of him. But this estrangement, this aura of untouchable and impressive power, was one that he cultivated intentionally. Perhaps it was due to this Crown Prince's young age, but he could never hold any such fear for long. Shortly after he started transcribing the scripture, he called out, "Shifu!" He opened his eyes. "What is it?" "I learned all the sword techniques you taught me last time. Isn't it time for a new technique?" The Crown Prince said. "All right. What do you want to learn?" he asked. "I want to learn the technique you used to save me," the Crown Prince exclaimed. He contemplated for a brief moment and said, "That move? No." "Why not?" the Crown Prince asked. "That technique is impractical. At least it's not suitable for you," he explained. The Crown Prince was confused. "But isn't it useful? Using one sword to dissolve the power of 2 swords, you saved me with that technique." It was normal for the Crown Prince not to understand. He said, "Your Royal Highness, let me ask you a question." "Go ahead." "There were once 2 people, oh my god, here we go, eyes bloodshot with hunger. They started fighting, each hoping to rob the other of their food. In came a 3rd person. And he wanted to stop the fight. Do you think words would be effective in this situation?" "I don't think so. Talking would be useless. They only want food, right?" "Correct, because the root of the problem hasn't been solved. No one will listen to your grand explanations. Thus, the only way this 3rd person can stop the fight is to provide what they want, to give them food from his own purse." The Crown Prince seemed to understand, but also seemed not to. The reasoning now is the same. You must understand that the moment a sword is unsheathed, someone will be hurt. When force is released, something must receive it. Thus, it is wrong to say I dissolved the force of 2 swords. Nothing was dissolved. I absorbed their attacks. To stop an attack by hurting oneself is a foolish technique and only to be used when there is no other alternatives. As a noble crown prince, you've no use for something like that. As a noble crown prince. The crown prince continued to copy his scriptures, but he still looked contemplative a while later. He asked, "Do you have any other questions?" After a moment of hesitation, the crown prince said, "One thing, Shifu. If the third person didn't have enough food, what then?" Ellipsis answer. So it's a weird place for an ellipsis answer. Because they're usually more comedic, you know? This one was serious. The crown prince continued. "If both the hungry had gotten food but wanted more and fought harder because of greed and sought more food from the third person, what should be done?" "What do you think?" he asked. The crown prince pondered and said, "I don't know. Maybe he shouldn't have intervened from the start." The great hall was gold. Everything was gold right now. However, it was awash with red. At every golden banquet table, a person was sprawled. Their throats were slit, all tragic deaths. The hand that gripped the sword wouldn't stop shaking. The stately king was covered in blood, and his eyes were red, filled with pain and hate. By his feet was the dead body of the queen. With sword in hand, he took one step after another and made his way over. When the king looked up and saw him, he was supremely dumbfounded. "State Preceptor, you!" The sword struck with cold, cruel force. Just then, he sensed something and whipped his head around. The young crown prince stood outside the door amidst the corpses of guards strewn across the entrance floor. The boy's eyes were blank, as if doubting what he saw was real. He took a step forward and almost tripped on the threshold, dazed and disoriented. He withdrew the sword, and blood splattered his black robes. The crown prince hadn't tripped on the threshold, but on the dead bodies sprawled on the ground. He threw himself on the king's body, his voice finally returning. "Father? Mother?" But the king would never speak again. The crown prince couldn't shake his father awake. He quickly turned his head toward him, his eyes wide. "Shifu, what are you doing? What did you do? State Preceptor!" It was a long while before he heard his own voice, devoid of emotion. "You all deserved it." Oh my gosh, okay. Yeah, this was a flashback, which has one hint that there's something wrong here, and it's the hand, Shulian's hand, shaking on the sword. The hand that gripped the sword wouldn't stop shaking. Like, that is the one hint we really have that something is off here. Whew. But yeah, this is good. I like that there's a flashback for this, actually. But I like it because the flashback exists in the Donghua, so it's nice to see that a little bit of it is in the book as well. And I also think it's really necessary to establish this connection between Shulian and Long Chen-Shou when Shulian was staying in Yong'an. Because if that is not established, this master-disciple sort of relationship, then nothing that happens really hits, you know? So it's kind of important, the thing that Shulian has deliberately made himself like a very cool and scary person. But this child, like, it seems that because of his young age, the fearfulness, it never lasts for Long Chen-Shou. Like, he keeps approaching his Shifu again and again and again. And I like that, I really do like that. Shulian slept fitfully and rolled awake with a start. He blearily rubbed his eyes and discovered he hadn't actually slept for that long. Moreover, he didn't even dream of anything nice. To the latter point, it was a good thing that something had jabbed him in the chest and woken him. He sat in silence for a while when he felt around his clothes and found something. He opened his palm to reveal 2 dice, the same ones from Paradise Manor. A sea of red floated in his mind's eye. The scene was blurry, but that crimson figure was supremely distinct, gazing intently at him, unmoving. Shellyan sighed. I wonder how much is left of Sandlang's Paradise Manor. If I get banished again, who knows how much junk I'll have to sell or how long it'll take to pay him back. Decades, centuries. If anything, I'll pay him the rest of my life. Which honestly doesn't sound too bad. Shellyan stared at the dice for a bit longer, clapping his hands closed in prayer. He shook the dice in his palms and rolled them to the ground. The dice rattled and rolled before coming to a stop. As expected, all the luck he had borrowed from Hua Chang was used up. He was hoping for another roll of 2 6s, but it came up snake eyes. Shellyan couldn't help but puff out a rueful breath and shake his head. Suddenly, he heard footsteps coming from behind. He stiffened and packed away both his smile and the dice. The footsteps didn't sound like those of John Woo. John Woo's footfalls were steady and composed, quite unhurried. Similarly, although Hua Chang walked with nonchalance and lacked decorum, often lazy and languid, his air of confidence and surety was identical to John Woo's. These footsteps, in contrast, could be called a little floaty. Shellyan turned his head and was taken aback. It's you. The person who had arrived was clad in black, his face fair and his lips thin. His expression was indifferent, appearing incomparably aloof. Although a martial god, he looked more like a civil god. Who else could it be but Mu Ching? He saw Shellyan's startled expression and raised his brows. Who did you think I was? Fangxin? Without waiting for a response, he lifted his black robes and crossed the threshold of the door. Well, Fangxin probably won't come. What are you doing here? Shellyan asked. The Emperor detained you and barred His Highness Tai Hua from coming here, but he didn't say I couldn't come, Mu Ching said. He didn't bother answering Shellyan's question. Fine. Shellyan wasn't actually curious anyway, so he didn't question him further. Mu Ching looked around the brand new Palace of Shanle until his eyes finally ended up on Shellyan. After looking him up and down, he slowly tossed something at him. A blue blur glinted in the air. Shellyan caught it with his left hand, and when he opened his palm, he found a small blue porcelain bottle. It was a bottle of medicine. Mu Ching said apathetically, It's pretty unsightly dragging around that bloodied arm. Shellyan held the bottle but didn't move. He watched Mu Ching instead, a calculating expression on his face. Oh my god, this scene. Since his third ascension, there could only be one phrase to describe the way Mu Ching treated him. Passive-aggressive. It always felt like he was waiting for Shellyan to get booted for the third time so he could make snide remarks. But now that Shellyan might actually get booted that third time, he suddenly became pleasant. He even came specifically to deliver medication. This complete reversal in attitude made Shellyan feel quite disconcerted. Agreed. That's what I've been saying. Seeing that Shellyan wasn't moving, Mu Ching gave a faint smile. Use it if you want. Either way, no one else is coming to deliver you anything. It wasn't an insincere smile. It was obvious that he was genuinely in an excellent mood at the moment. Although Shellyan didn't feel any pain in his right arm, there was also no reason to just leave the injuries be. That pat from John Woo was a quick emergency fix, but it would be better to heal it with medication. Thus, he opened the small blue bottle and poured the contents onto his arm without any particular care. What came out of the bottle was neither powder nor pill, but instead a faint blue smoke. The smoke circulated languidly, wrapping around his arm. Its scent cool and refreshing. It was certainly a high-grade healing item. Again, Mu Ching bringing a fucking high-grade healing item. I mean, I think, just me making up a little bit of fan fiction here, I think that he was the second one to arrive on the scene because he had to pick up this healing bottle in his palace before he could go see them. Just saying. Gosh, he's so fucking annoying. He's so confusing. Mu Ching suddenly asked, "Was everything Long Chenshaw said true? Did you really kill those Yong'an royals?" Shirlian looked up and met his gaze. Even if Mu Ching had been forcibly hiding it, Shirlian still detected a trace of uncontrollable excitement in his eyes. He seemed highly interested in the details of Shirlian's massacre at the Gilded Banquet. He followed with another question. "How did you kill them?" Why is he so excited? Like, why does he want to know this information? I don't understand. I noticed this in the Donghua as well, that he was like really interested and very curious. Like, he was pushing for this information for some reason. What do you want to do with that information? Why are you showing up being like all nice but also pushing like this? I don't understand. I don't understand. You're so annoying. Though I've been assured that I'll understand eventually, I suppose. We'll see. Just then, another set of heavy footfalls came from behind them. The two turned their heads in unison to see that the new visitor was Fangxin, who Mu Ching said wouldn't come. The moment he entered, he noticed Mu Ching in the main hall, who was even smiling as he stood next to a crouching Shirlian. Fangxin frowned with alarm. Yeah, because if Mu Ching is in a good mood around Shirlian, that means time to protect. Oh my god. "What are you doing here?" Shirlian waved the little bottle in his hand. Mu Ching schooled his expression. He had just said Fangxin wouldn't be coming, and then Fangxin arrived the next second. Not funny at all. "It's not like this is your palace. You think you can come, but I can't?" Mu Ching rebutted. Fangxin ignored him and turned to Shirlian. He hadn't yet opened his mouth when Shirlian spoke up. "If the two of you came to ask the same questions, then I will give you the same answer. There's no reason to disbelieve it. Every word I said at the Palace of Divine Might today was true." Fangxin paled. Mu Ching loaded that expression of his the most and said in annoyance, "All right, put that face away. After everything, for who are you looking so pained?" Fangxin shot him a death glare. "Not for you, get out of here." "And who are you to tell me to get out?" Mu Ching countered. "Speaking as if you're so loyal, how many years did you last again? Didn't you run away too?" Yup, dipping into that backstory. Veins popped all over Fangxin's forehead. Shirlian could sense this exchange was going in the wrong direction and raised his hands. Hold it, as if Mu Ching were the type to hold it back. He sneered. "Everyone says you left because you couldn't stand to see your former master fall from grace. What a pretty excuse. At the end of the day, you just didn't want to waste the rest of your days following a broken man." Fangxin swung his fist. "What the fuck do you know?" Bam. Fangxin's fist landed squarely on Mu Ching's face. Mu Ching was fine of features, a standard pretty boy, and upon impact of Fangxin's mighty punch, it was like a persimmon had been smashed on his face. Bloody and miserable. Yet he stood his ground, and without so much as a whine, he threw a punch right back. When the two ascended, they both obtained their own spiritual weapons, and yet when anger overtook their senses, the best tools to release their rage was still their fists and feet. When Fangxin and Mu Ching fought 800 years ago, their martial capabilities were at the same level, and after 800 years there was still no difference. Every thrown punch landed, the fist fight was messy and wild, and each of them held their own. Fangxin cried angrily, "Don't think I don't know your nasty thoughts. The more crimes he commits, the happier you become." Ooh, maybe some truth to that. It seems like whenever Shirlian makes a mistake or something pops up that's like bad for Shirlian, that's kind of when Mu Ching has that joy at his expenses. Mu Ching's bad. I knew you always looked down on me. What a joke! Do you see yourself? What right do you have to look down on me? You're the pot calling the kettle black. Long Chencho and Shirley-Ann hadn't even had a chance to start their duel, and Fangxin and Mooching were already brawling. Their grudges had been building for a long time. The fight was uncontrolled and riotous, each cursing the other without hearing what was cursed back, and they certainly had no mind to hear anything Shirley-Ann had to say. Shirley-Ann still remembered, back when the three of them were younger, Mooching had been soft-spoken and well-mannered, and if Fangxin hit anyone, it was only under Shirley-Ann's orders. And he'd stop when Shirley-Ann said stop. That was no longer true. Dragging his injured arm, Shirley-Ann rushed toward the door, hoping to call for help from any nearby officials. But before he put even a single foot outside the main hall, there was an enormously loud bang that exploded from the front door. Oh my god, oh my god. Here we are. Fangxin and Mooching were shocked into stillness by the booming noise, their eyes alert, looking to where the sound came from. The front doors to the Palace of Shanle had been kicked open. Beyond the door wasn't the expansive grand avenue of divine might of the heavenly court, but rather a dead blackness. And from within that blackness, innumerable chilling silver butterflies rushed out toward them. We have art right before the next chapter, so I feel like this kind of counts for both chapter 19 and 20. And it is just the back of Shirley-Ann looking into the void, and so many George. So many George. He really was a paid actor in this. I was about to just read on. I feel like this was a bad place to stop, but let's take a short break. Just gather our thoughts. And also gather our Gaga tally because Sanlang is back. Yeah, chapter 19, or, well, episode 6 in the Donghua was definitely the episode where we got the biggest glimpse into the Shanle trio and their past that we had in the entirety of season 1 and 2. This explosion of emotions is just, it's super important because it suddenly gives us more information that we didn't have before. We have the direct testimony of both Mooching and Fangxin, even though they're shouting at each other and just being, very emotional, lots of rage. They're still letting us know something. And we're learning, again, that the cause of their rage, their anger at each other is Shirley-Ann and what happened back then. We really do need to know what happened back then. Especially to uncover and understand Mooching's whole deal. Like, I feel like we understand Fangxin and where he's coming from. I feel like he's a little bit more straightforward, both as a character and also his whole arc seems more obvious to me as a reader. Of course, I could be blindsided, like there could be more stuff about him later that will be a bit like, oh, okay. But as of right now, he is still the less complicated character. Like, when we learn more about him later on in this season, when he confronts Hua Chang later, like, everything we learn, it feels like it's in its place. It feels like I understand where this is coming from. Mooching, I don't understand him. I don't understand. Like, Shirley-Ann's memory of Mooching, again, is that he was, soft-spoken and pretty polite. Pretty and polite. Tee. So all of this is, it's a bit... Is there something Shirley-Ann is not telling us, or is what Shirley-Ann experienced back then, like his perception of what happened, different from Mooching's perception of what happened? I feel like there's a bit of a misunderstanding, but also a disagreement sort of thing going on. Again, I'm missing pieces, and I know, I've been reassured multiple times that I will learn, but I'm just being slow. Stop being slow, it's time to read. Let's read on, so that I can stop being slow. It was a short chapter anyway. What it used is a discussion for a 13-page chapter. Yeah, let's keep going. Okay, so thank you for joining me for the break. Now let's roll into chapter 20. Heavenly Palace Raid, a short salutation to scare the gods. Heck yes. There was a confusion of twinkling silver light, and Shirley's unthinking reaction was to block with his hand. Roya, who was always wrapped around his wrist, would attack automatically if dire circumstances required it. Ooh, okay, so that's good to know. Roya is a little bit of an alarm system in that sense. Yet not a single silver butterfly attacked him. Instead, they flew around him to furiously charge the two behind who had been fighting just moments before. Fangxin and Muqing had suffered before at the hands of those wraith butterflies. They knew how powerful they were and didn't dare to be careless. In one blink, they'd both raised their hands at the same time and cried, "Shield!" Millions of silver butterflies surged toward them, flapping their wings to summon blasting winds, but there was an invisible wall blocking them. The butterflies smashed against it like a tempest, like the battering of hail, and white lights flared from the friction with fiery sparks. The two had cast a spell to protect themselves, but even against the magical shield, the wraith butterflies were forceful and relentless, as crazed as moths confronting a flame. Despite mounting that spiritual defense, the two were pushed back by the relentless barrage of butterflies. A moment of carelessness would give the enemy the upper hand. If they didn't release the shield, the butterflies would continue to push closer. If they did, there'd still be no chance for them to grab for their weapons before the swarm overtook them. Both Fangxin and Muqing mentally groaned, gritting their teeth to hang on. Fangxin stole a glance and saw Shirley was still standing right where he had been, with his head lowered. Not knowing what was wrong, he shouted to him. "Your Highness, be careful! Don't just stand there! Come behind the shield!" And yet, when Shirley turned his head, not a single hair upon it had been harmed. He frowned. Huh? The two looked closely and almost spat blood on the spot from their furious shock. Shirley was staring at them in blank confusion. A wraith butterfly held in one hand. It's George. Hello, George. Hi, George. Earlier, when the butterflies were gusting through like wild winds, there was one that was a little slow and couldn't keep up with the rest. As it flapped arduously in front of Shirley, he had a simple thought. That poor little silver butterfly was working really hard, but it couldn't fly anymore. And so he unthinkingly extended his palm just beneath it, wings flapping happily. That silver butterfly had landed on his palm and now wouldn't leave. I am so charmed. I am so charmed by this specific silver butterfly. And so is Shirley, honestly. George, you worked so hard. You worked so hard. Both Fangxin and Muqing popped veins on their foreheads. "Don't touch that thing with your hand! Don't you know what it is? It's dangerous!" Just then, Shirley felt a tightening on his wrist. Someone had grabbed hold of him and pulled hard. His entire body was drawn into the darkness beyond the door. Although he was shrouded in darkness, he didn't feel any alarm or anxiety. This darkness was like a layer of gentle armor. Not only did he not sense any danger, it actually somehow calmed him down. Even if the person within the darkness hadn't shown himself, with those silver butterflies, was it so hard to guess? Nope. Muqing cried in disbelief. "What audacity! You dare come cause mischief in the heavenly court? What impudence!" A voice laughed. "We're all the same. Weren't you heavenly officials of the upper court equally impudent in my territory?" Even though Shirley already knew who had grabbed him, he was still a little startled to hear that familiar voice so close by. Fangxin shouted, "Hua Chang, the heavenly emperor is here in the heavenly court. You let him go." Hua Chang clicked his tongue. "Do either of you have the ability to make me?" With that taunting question, the giant doors closed heavily with a bang. Shirley sensed a hand gripping his wrist firmly, guiding him swiftly along. It was black as pitch all around them, and the silver bells on those black boots chimed in his ears. The ground beneath their feet was uneven. The doors hadn't led them to the bright, open, great roads of the heavenly capital, but rather to a remote mountain valley. Hua Chang must have used a teleportation array to connect the front entrance of the palace of Shanle to this mountain valley. But how did he do it? One would surely have to be a heavenly official to be in a position to do that, no? Hint, hint. Shillian was about to speak when a voice exploded in his ear. Your Highness, where are you? It was Fangxin. His voice was by his ear, but his person was not. He had shouted from within the communication array. Shillian's eardrums hurt from the noise and were further blasted by the terrified voices of several other heavenly officials. What's going on, General? Did something happen? Mooching also entered the communication array. Bad news. Where's Ling Wen? Report to the Emperor. Shillian ran off. You little shit. But he's like, yeah, if you're kidnapped and you don't resist, I suppose that's not running off, but it's not really a kidnapping either. It's hard to say, huh? He usually spoke gently and courteously, but now there was a flustered tinge to his voice. Ling Wen reacted immediately. What? I'll go to the palace of Shanle to take a look. An official cried in shock. The law... Stopping themselves. His Highness ran off? Wasn't he detained in the palace of Shanle? Shi Qingxuan entered the communication array. I just saw a bunch of junior officials of the middle court guarding the palace. You can only enter but not leave. How could he run off? Fangxin exclaimed. What do you mean ran off? Stop adding to the confusion. Well, he ran off with someone, Mooching said. He was kidnapped, Fangxin clarified angrily. Your Highness, can you still hear us? Where are you right now? In that moment, everyone was speaking with raised voices, and everyone was demanding answers. Once Ling Wen confirmed that the palace of Shanle was empty, she began searching for Shillian's present location, and Shi Qingxuan distributed further flurries of merits. The communication array was thrown into complete confusion, everyone trying to talk at once. It was so chaotic that Shillian couldn't get a word in at all. He drew in a deep breath, but just as he was about to match the shouting and tell everyone to calm down, Hua Chang suddenly turned around and reached over with 2 fingers. Those cold digits gently touched his temple, and Hua Chang chuckled. Long time no see. How is everyone doing? With the soft touch of his 2 fingers, Hua Chang entered the heavenly communication array through Shillian. That nonchalant greeting was heard not just by Shillian beside him, but by every flustered heavenly official within the communication array. Instantly, they fell into a dead silence. There was a silent uproar. No wonder. Such arrogance could only come from that person. Hua Chang continued. I don't know if you missed me, but I haven't thought about any of you at all. There certainly were many heavenly officials in the heavens who secretly thought about him every day. But when they heard Hua Chang say he didn't think about them at all, they began reciting scriptures to pray that the man would continue not thinking about them going forward. Then Hua Chang snickered gleefully. However, I've been fairly free recently. If anyone is feeling bored and wants to chat with me, I welcome them with open arms. Given the circumstances, the meaning of that statement was more than obvious. If anyone is brave enough to give chase, they'll be the next one I challenge. It was a challenge they were certain to lose. He would surely wipe the floor with them. Was this not a blatant threat? The communication array had previously been boiling with excitement, and some martial gods were even proactively ready to heed the call, prepared to give chase. However, with only a short salutation from Hua Chang, all such passion disappeared. No one wanted to be remembered by Hua Chang. And so they all pretended they weren't present while their ears remained closely tuned in to follow the development. At the same time, their minds were rolling with stormy waves. Such impertinence from that Crimson Rainsword flower to come all the way to the upper court just to kidnap someone, and not just anyone, but the laughingstock of the three realms who was already in hot water. Silence befell the communication array. Only Fangxin was still swearing angrily. Huachang removed his fingers as soon as he was done speaking. Shilian blurted out, "Sunlong." Huachang, however, let go of his hand. "Don't mind him," he said to Shilian. "Come with me." His voice was low, the emotion behind it hard to discern. Yet the way he let go of Shilian's wrist was swift, almost like he had been shaken off. Shilian was immediately reminded of the first time they met and how he had evaded his touch. Shilian froze on the spot. At first, he wanted to ask Huachang why he had appeared so suddenly. He vaguely thought that maybe Huachang had known about his house arrest and had come to his rescue. So when he called out Sunlong a moment before, he was secretly a little happy. But with the way Huachang had just shaken off his touch, Shilian abruptly realized. How could he think Huachang would come to rescue him? He had just burned down Paradise Manor and the armory. Wasn't it more plausible that Huachang had come knocking to settle the score or for payback? Even if, in the end, the reason Paradise Manor had burned the way it did was because Shou Qingxuan fanned the flames, he was the one who kindled the fire. The pair walked, one behind the other. The more Shilian thought, the guiltier he felt. "Sunlong, I'm sorry," he apologized in spite of himself. Huachang suddenly paused in his step. "Why are you apologizing?" "The reason I went to Ghost City was to investigate the missing Earthmaster. I didn't tell you the full truth, so that counts as a lie. And you treated me with utmost hospitality, but I burned down your Paradise Manor and the armory full of your treasures. I am so very sorry." Huachang didn't speak. Shilian also knew that "very sorry" really didn't amount to much and added, "But I expect I'll be banished soon, and after I descend to the mortal realm, I'll definitely think of a way to repay you and see if I can—" "Why should you have to repay me?" Huachang interrupted. His tone was a little harsh, as if he couldn't listen anymore, and he abruptly turned around. "Did you forget that my blade wounded your arm? I hurt you, not the other way around. Why should you have to repay me?" Shilian had almost forgotten the injury of his right arm. He was a little taken aback before he remembered. My arm is fine. It doesn't hurt. It'll be better soon. Besides, it's only like this because I charged in and struck back against you. You aren't to blame in the first place." Huachang stared at him hard, his left eye unusually bright. Shilian noticed that he seemed to be shaking. A brief moment later, he realized that it wasn't Huachang who was shaking, but the scimitar Ming at his waist. That silver scimitar hung over the red robes was shaking non-stop. The eye upon it, shaped by silver lines, was also quivering. If it were the eye of a child, then that child was clearly bawling. How was that the end of the chapter? That's unfair. That was too short. Oh my lord. That was only a few pages. That was like the shortest chapter in this book so far. 1, 2, 3, 4, 7 pages? That's not a chapter. It was good though. I needed a break because I was getting a little bit emotional there. Gosh, the scene. I was so emotional about this scene watching it the first time. And now I'm back at it, emotional about it again. Does that count as a chapter? I feel like that doesn't count as a chapter. No. We're not even pausing. We're reading on. Though I will say, once again, oh my god, just the fact that Shilian was happy that he came to get him and then just wallows in his own guilt. Yeah, like Shilian is just taking all the blame onto himself, not understanding that Hua Chang also feels bad about this because he likes you, Shilian. He really does. Oh my god. It's so nice. Ah, it's so nice. Okay. Chapter 21, y'all. Adroit dies. What is... I'm gonna look that up before we do anything else. Adroit dies. Adroit, clever or skillful. Example, he was adroit at tax avoidance. Okay, so skillful dies. Okay. Okay. Interesting. Chapter 21. Adroit dies solely for the safety of one. Seeing the state it was in, Shilian unconsciously reached out, wanting to pet it. What's wrong? But Hua Chang sidestepped and turned away, avoiding Shilian's touch, and smacked Erming hard on the hilt. Nothing's wrong, pay no mind. After being smacked soundly by Hua Chang, the scimitar Erming, the cursed blade that caused all the gods in heaven to tremble at the mere sound of its name, shook even harder. Just then, Shilian heard Fangxin again in the communication array. How could Hua Chang use the teleportation array within the heavenly court? How do we open this door? Shi Qingxuan cried. General Nanyang, me, I think I know how. His Highness and I suffered this trick of Hua Chang's when we were on our mission. Take 2 dice and roll them before the door, then push to see if it'll open. Shilian remembered now. Didn't he casually toss the dice around for fun earlier in the main hall? He could still clearly recall having to run so pathetically for their lives in the earthworm tunnel and from those savage spirits. He quickly called out, "Stop! Don't! Be careful!" However, his voice never reached the communication array. His spiritual powers were probably almost depleted and would be gone entirely by the time his message was transmitted. Fangxin seemed to have done exactly what Shi Qingxuan said, without a second thought. How did Shilian know this? Because the next instant, Fangxin suddenly swore in the communication array. He cursed whenever he was agitated, and when he cursed, the words were often terribly vulgar. To avoid dirtying eyes and ears, his words shall not be repeated. That's actually one of the funniest things this book has done. It's like a story. It's again that storyteller vibe. Like, just trust me on this. Fangxin, dirty mouth. In fact, so dirty that we're not gonna repeat it right here and now. But a change, unless there's gonna be like explanations when we're listening to them. We saw in the Donghua that Mu Qing was the one who made the dice, because Fangxin was asking for dice and nobody came forth with them. But let's see what happens. The heavenly officials lurking within the communication array asked immediately, "General, what's wrong?" Mu Qing's voice came next, and he also sounded quite dumbfounded. "What is this place?" It appeared that he had also gone through the door with Fangxin. "Be careful, guys," Shi Qingxuan called out. "Different numbered rolls will bring you to different places. What number did you roll?" "He rolled a 4, Mu Qing said. Okay, 4. 4 was the fear thing. Your greatest fear. What was 7 then? I can't remember what that would be. Because apparently it's not the fear thing, so not Shi Qingxuan's greatest fears, but something else. Fangxin's cursing also carried a trace of panic and terror, and Shilian was worried they had met with danger. The caster of this spell was right next to him, and he had no time to worry about any reservations. He hurriedly asked, "Sandang, what does a roll of 4 open to?" "Depends," Hua Chang replied. "The door will open to whatever the roller fears most." Just as Hua Chang answered, Mu Qing coolly snapped, "You thought to roll first and rolled out a woman's bath? Give me the dice, I'll roll." Hearing women's bath, Shilian covered his face with his hands. Fangxin had always kept his distance from women, his face changing whenever women were so much as spoken of. It was as if the female sex were savage, wild beasts. To him, a woman's bath really was the scariest place on earth. Worse than the immeasurable depths of tiger caves or dragon lakes. It seemed Mooching had successfully snatched away the dice, and Sholian sighed a breath of relief. However, not a moment later, the two roared again. Shouchingchuan woefully called out to them, "Generals, what did you run into this time?" There was no response, only odd burbling sounds, as if they'd been plunged into water. Everyone held their breath. After a moment, Fangxin emerged within the array with a loud gasp, sounding as if he was spitting something out. It appeared that he had broken through the water's surface. He yelled, "Black marsh crocodiles!" As it turned out, the two of them had hardly fled 2 steps out of the women's bath before Mooching took the dice by force and rolled, and their next step had them falling into a marsh. They were immediately submerged past their waists and up to their mouths in the muddy water. After fighting to get out, over a dozen incredibly long crocodile monsters swam over to surround them. Each of the monsters was over 12 meters in length and had grown human arms and legs from years of feeding on human flesh. The sight of them moving through the marsh with those limbs stroking through the water would steal anyone's breath with fright. And it was also really grossing the two of them out. Half sunken in the black marsh, the two fervently fought the crocodiles until Fangxin had finally had enough. "Give me the dice, let me roll. You didn't roll anything good either." Mooching was never one to admit defeat, and he shot a blinding spiritual blast. "Crocodile monsters are still more decent than a women's bath. Who knows what you'll roll next? Give them to me." "Fucking..." Fangxin yelled angrily. "Didn't you already take the dice? Where are they?" Oh my lord. The two had completely forgotten they were still connected to the communication array and started throwing punches again while denouncing each other's luck in dice rolling. The dice lost and their whereabouts long forgotten. The heavenly officials in the communication array eagerly listened to them cursing at each other. The bigger the better when it came to spectacle. They were losing their minds, trying to hold back their laughter, some even pounding their fists in their own seats, wishing desperately they could be watching this live to cheer the fight on. Although Fangxin and Mooching's luck didn't seem very good, those wild spirits and monsters didn't really pose any danger. Sholian only prayed they would give up sooner rather than later, and be released from their predicament. At the same time, he was thankful that he himself didn't roll any number that called forth any horrors, that he rolled a Huachang instead. He spoke as he walked. "I rolled snake eyes earlier. Does that mean every time I roll a 2, I can see you?" As soon as he asked the question, he realized his words implied a bit too much, as if he had dearly wanted to see Huachang. "Be real, Sholian, you did dearly want to see Huachang." But Huachang replied, "No." Sholian felt a little awkward and scratched his cheek. "Oh, so that's not it. I was wrong then." Huachang, walking in front of him, said, "If you want to see me, it won't matter what you roll. I will appear." "I love you" is lame anyway. "And I would die for you" is so outdated. "If you want to see me, it won't matter what you roll. I will appear." And somehow historians will still say that they were just friends. Sholian swallowed hard and forgot everything else he wanted to say. He hadn't had the chance to dissect the meaning of those words before another voice spoke within the communication array. "Let me!" Not long after those words were spoken, a blinding white light slashed across the sky, and then there was the earth-shattering sound of metal cracking. Huachang and Sholian's path was blocked. When the white light cooled and slowly faded away, Sholian finally saw what had flown in to block them. A sword. The sword. His eyes slowly widened and his pupils shrank. The sword was long and slender, embedded deep in the ground on a slant. The body of the sword itself was still quivering from impact. Its blade was deep and foreboding, forged from what looked like black jade, smoother than a mirror. And if anyone were to approach, they could see their own reflection within it. The blackness was disrupted by a thin, silver-white line running vertically down the heart of the blade. It cut the blackness in half like a ray of sweet love. The name of this sword was Fangxin? Huh. Okay then. Okay. Interesting. I don't think they ever said that in the Dongwell, did they? Did they say that the sword was named Fangxin? Am I stupid? Did I miss that? You're gonna have to let me know if I missed that, but okay. Okay. A figure landed in front of the sword and said, "This is your sword." After the death of State Preceptor Fangxin, the sword he carried was kept by the Crown Prince of Yong'an. The one who had thrown the sword Fangxin and blocked their path was none other than Lang Chencho. It would appear that though Fangxin and Muqing had failed, Lang Chencho managed to roll the right numbers. It really couldn't be said whether it was because of his luck or Shilian's misfortune. The only thing that could be said with certainty was, of the two crown princes, Lang Chencho had always been the more fortunate. Which is saying something, because Kid kind of lost his entire fucking family. Shilian. I mean, Shilian did too. And his entire fucking kingdom. So I guess Lang Chencho is more fortunate. For now. Hua Chang stood with his hands clasped behind his back. He moved slightly, but Shilian immediately stretched out his hand to stop him. He said in a low voice, "Let me." Lang Chencho blocked the road, their only path through the heart of the valley. "Duel me, no matter how it ends. Even if I die at your hand, I won't ask for any reparations. And I don't need you to ask the Emperor for banishment either." Anyone could tell that until his demands for this fight were satisfied, he would never rest. After a long pause, Shilian finally nodded his head slowly. "Fine." He took a few steps forward and approached the sword, gripped the hilt and pulled it from the debris. "You asked for this," he said softly. After hundreds of years, Fangxin had finally returned to his hands. And it moaned softly in Shilian's grip. Standing close by, Hua Chang's eye also flashed sharply at the sound of that sword's incessant cry. Okay, that's a little bit creepy. Like moaned, like a painful sort of sound, or like a pleased sort of sound, because that's not specified. But that's interesting. It kind of gives the sword a little bit of a personality, even though it's not like character-like as, say, Roya or Ming. That's super interesting. And I feel like it's kind of important to clarify what kind of sound that was, because is it happy to be returning to Shilian's hand? Or is it like echoing the pain that it has brought, in a sense? Like the people it has killed, you know? Who the fuck gave him the sword? Where is it from? Like, we still haven't clarified that, right? We're going to have to see. Maybe there'll be more details in here for us to discover. With sword in hand, Shilian swung and pointed it to the ground before saying coolly, "However this duel ends, do not regret it." "I won't," Lang Chencho shouted. Lang Chencho was so tense it felt like his head was going to split. Both his hands clutched his great sword tightly. His eyes focused, his breath held, his sight was locked onto Fangxin, the sword that was black as jade, not daring to be careless for even a moment. Shilian took a sudden step and lunged forth. Lang Chencho's eyes focused, ready to strike, when his body froze. It was as if he had been suddenly thrust up, and he fell heavily to the ground. He looked down to find that he really was bound. A snow-white silk band had come out of nowhere and wrapped around his body several times like a venomous snake. Which is kind of funny to me because do venomous snakes do the wrapping thing? Isn't that more like constricting snakes? Correct me if I'm wrong, any snake lovers out there. Long Chen-cho had been taught swordsmanship by the state preceptor Fangxin ever since he was young, and he revered the man deeply. This was why the moment Shirley gripped his sword, all of his attention was on him and his movements. He never noticed the white silk band that snuck behind to ambush him. How could there be such a shameless trick up his sleeves? Seeing that Roy succeeded, Shirley instantly relaxed his tense expression and fretful heart. He tossed Fangxin aside and heaved a long sigh, wiping away his sweat. That was close. Okay, so again, I remember him just tossing it aside. He picks it up again later, not to leave it there, but to me, this kind of shows that to Shirley this sword is a bit he was kind of happy to be rid of it to begin with. He doesn't want to touch it now either. And as we see in the Donghua, he hesitates to use it later on as well. But, okay. Long Chen-cho lay on the ground, struggling to break free. He didn't know how vicious that white silk band could be, and the more he struggled, the tighter it bound him. He cried angrily, "State Preceptor, what is this? Let me go and fight me to the death!" Shirley wiped sweat from his forehead and replied, "We already fought to the death. The thing that's binding you is one of my spiritual devices. You already lost." Long Chen-cho was incredulous. "How can this count? When I said fight to the death, I meant using a sword. If you're a man, use a sword. Ambushing me with a white bandage, how despicable!" He genuinely thought the sword was the best of all weapons and wasn't thinking much about his words, but he sounded like a male heavenly official who was prejudiced against other male heavenly officials for using white silk bands. He was insulting Shirley for not being a man. But Shirley didn't care whether he acted like a man or not. He'd cross-dressed before. True. And he'd hung the words "I can't get erect" on his lips. Also true. Nothing could get to him. Shirley knelt down next to Long Chen-cho. "You were simply unprepared. You never said I had to use the sword, so I used your loophole. Who are you gonna tell? Ambush is a battle tactic. Cunning well used is called intelligent strategy. If your opponent had been anyone else, you would already be dead." Hua Cheng stood not far from the two and huffed a soundless laugh. But Long Chen-cho was shocked to his core. When this man was still the state preceptor of Yong'an, he'd always taught him about being honorable and conscientious. Press forward with indomitable will and make an all-out effort. He'd never thought there'd be a day he'd hear such words from the lips of his once teacher. He was dumbfounded. "State Preceptor, you've changed so much. You weren't like this in the past." "I've always been this way, actually," Shirley replied. "You just didn't know. I remember telling you a long time ago not to venerate me as an incorruptible saintly figure, since I'm not who you think I am in your head. In the end, you've only disappointed yourself." Shirley rose to his feet. "Have a good long think about it, and next time, don't fall for your opponent's tricks." Seeing that he was about to walk away, Long Chen-cho immediately called out, "Stop!" Shirley stopped. Long Chen-cho gritted his teeth and finally ground out the words. "You owe me an explanation." "What kind of explanation are you looking for?" Shirley asked. Long Chen-cho's voice quivered. "State Preceptor, my royal parents and I, did we not treat the remnants of the Shanla people well?" That was indeed the truth. Even after the kingdom of Shanla fell, many of the surviving citizens never forgot their roots. After the kingdom of Yong'an was established and began its rule, those people and their descendants continued to live on as the people of Shanla and often clashed with people of the new kingdom. The first few generations of the Yong'an monarchy ruled with force and cruelly massacred many Shanla survivors when protests broke out. On the other side, There were ungrounded alliances formed by the Shanle people to plot assassinations of the Yong'an nobility. They even succeeded a few times. This continued on, and the end result was deep-seated hatred on both sides. However, during Lang Chencho's generation, the attitude toward those remnants of Shanle was one of gentleness. The complete opposite, Lang Chencho's parents had wanted to unite the country of the old and the new, and against many Yong'an voices of dissent. The king granted a princely title, Prince Anla, to a descendant of Shanle royalty. The king even made him Lang Chencho's playmate to demonstrate their sincerity. Lang Chencho himself had viewed Shanle well and never held prejudices from any past hatred. Okay, so this little exposition part here is what we're getting instead of the flashbacks, I'm guessing. And it does plant all the important things. In these 3 paragraphs, we learn what happened after the kingdom of Shanle fell. We learn how the Yong'an monarchy ruled, and also about the assassination attempts by the Shanle survivors. And we learn about Lang Chencho's generation and his parents, as well as Prince Anla plant, the mention of Prince Anla. You, Lang Chencho said, after what you did, there were many who said there must have been Shanle forces behind the incident. Many advised me to use that as an opportunity to thoroughly wipe out the Shanle people. Hatred between Yong'an and Shanle ran too deep. Anything that happened to either side, they would deem the other the mastermind. Lang Chencho continued, but I overruled them all. Since you never gave any details about your identity, I told them you were definitely not a man of Shanle. That was how so many people of Shanle escaped death and avoided genocide, because I forbade it. Of course, that was a good deed. But thinking back on it now, the good deeds he'd done made him feel all the more aggrieved. It wasn't that his actions were unjust, the deed itself was correct. He simply felt deeply wronged. He'd acted with such benevolence, but he didn't receive equivalent kindness in return. Lang Chencho's tone grew pleading. State Preceptor, that day was my birthday. He struggled against Roy's hold and strained to lift his upper body. Are you toying with me? A Shanle man killed my entire family, but I still have to follow his teachings and help all Shanle people? Are you toying with me on purpose? Shelian didn't respond, and Lang Chencho continued to shout accusations. Was it because your 17th birthday was a trial that you had to turn my 17th into a trial too? Shelian still didn't respond. Lang Chencho's anger flared, and he yelled, If that was your intention, then I won't let you have your way. Shelian's eyes widened at those words. Lang Chencho couldn't stand, but his eyes flashed bright and his tone turned determined, as though a roaring flame were ablaze within. He continued on, as if personally aggrieved, but also as if he was declaring war. If you want to fill my heart with hatred like yours, I surely won't. If you're going to force me to abandon myself like you did, I refuse. I will never. No matter what you do to me, I will never become like you. It was a declaration so heroic, Shelian was stunned just listening to it. A brief moment later, he puffed and burst out laughing, sound returning to him at last. Lang Chencho's eyes had been flowing with fiery tears filled with passion, but all that was deflated by Shelian's laugh. Bewilderment and anger filled his chest. Shelian clapped as he laughed uproariously. Good! Well said! Shelian couldn't remember the last time he'd laughed so heartily, and it took him some time before he could stop. He rubbed his eyes. Good. Remember what you said today, that you will never become like me. Huachang still had his arms crossed and watched with a cool eye. Just as Shelian finished speaking, there was suddenly a blast of red smoke before him. I was kind of disrupted by the fact that whenever we talk about Hua Chang looking at things and such, like we're describing just one eye, right? Which is correct. It's correct. It's right. It's just, it took me off guard. I almost laughed. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. This is such an emotional scene. Oh my lord. The Dongwa really did this scene justice. Everything about it. Oh my lord. But here we go. Buddha Wengdol. The explosion caught Shirley off guard and he jolted, thinking Long Chencho might have used some weird trick. He dodged away rapidly, his senses on alert. However, the blast was disruptive in sound only, and didn't pose any danger. When the smoke cleared, Long Chencho had disappeared from where he lay. What was left was a Buddha Wengdol swaying left and right. The Buddha Wengdol had a very round face and body, like a giant calabash gourd, which is a sort of pumpkin. I know that much. Its brows were long and its eyes black. The expression on its face was strong and good-natured, like that of a tiger, though also brimming with naivety. At present it was glaring, plump with anger, and it carried a fat sword on its back, mightily gallant in its form. It was exactly like Long Chencho, except as big as a lovable toy. Shillian stopped smiling and exclaimed, "Chencho?" Having lost its target, Roya returned with a whoosh and wrapped itself back around Shillian's wrist. Hua Chang walked over leisurely and flicked the Buddha Wengdol with his finger, snickering. Why does he look so foolish no matter what form he takes? Shillian picked up the Buddha Wengdol and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Finally, we've been missing some of those for the tally. This Samlang, is this Chencho? Why did he turn into this? Stop playing around with him and change him back. Nah, bring him along and let's go, Hua Chang replied. Go where? Shillian asked. Hua Chang didn't answer. Dice were tossed up and they landed in his palm. In a blink, a cave appeared before them. Here we fucking go. Time to warm up our cursing muscles. A, E, I, U, U. To turn someone into a Buddha Wengdol was such a mischievous spell, very much Hua Chang's style. But it was also hard to undo. In any case, Shillian couldn't unravel it, so he simply held the doll in his hands. He was just about to follow Hua Chang when he remembered Fangxin was still tossed aside on the ground and doubled back to pick up the sword. He strapped it onto his back, then followed Hua Chang inside. They hadn't been walking for long before the narrow path they'd started on at the cave entrance began to get progressively wider. Footfalls echoed, and a faint light appeared in the distance ahead of them, and they could hear singing. When Shirley was led to Paradise Manor in Ghost City, he had also heard singing, but the graceful songs of the charming female ghosts at Paradise Manor were enticing and beautiful, intoxicating like soft whispers from the land of the tender, which is a common trope in Chinese fantasy. Land of the tender generally refers to places where men find solace in feminine charms, such as brothels, or the use of aphrodisiacs or seduction. Okay, got it. So a brothel would be a land of the tender, got it. But the singing that they heard now was more like the chaotic caterwauling, I guess. I've never heard that word before. But some sort of, like when cats are moaning, I suppose, making weird sounds. Of demons, disorderly and awful. The two were nothing alike. Shirley couldn't help but ask, Samlang, what is this place? Shh. Hua Chang quietly shushed him. Shirley's question was already spoken in a near whisper. Hearing the shush, he practically held his breath entirely. He soon discovered why they needed to be silent. Several floating green ghost fires drifted over from further down the path. And when the balls of flame came closer, he saw they were little ghosts dressed in green. On the head of each little ghost was a small torchlight, as if each one was a big green candle. There was nowhere to hide in this cave, and the path was narrow. Julian was about to reach for Fangxin, but upon deciding NORWAY would be better suited for this situation, he dropped his hand again. Okay, so he was actually going to use Fangxin, but he decided that NORWAY would be better. In the Donghua, I thought he was hesitating. Okay. So maybe Julian has no qualms of using Fangxin. It's so weird that the sword is named Fangxin. I'm still not over this. Also, on the head of each little ghost was a small torchlight. So there's like just a light on their head. It doesn't say that there is a candle on their head. It's just say as if they were a big candle. So maybe they'll specify that later. But right now I'm a bit like, so the candle is just the interpretation that the Donghua went with. It's funny as fuck. I'll give them that. It's really silly and very memorable. But it doesn't say here that there were candles on their heads, right? But as the little ghosts passed them, they didn't bat an eyelash before moving on, still whispering amongst themselves. It wasn't that they didn't see them, but more that they didn't think it strange to see them. Julian looked at Hua Chang, but the one standing next to him wasn't the exceptionally handsome red-clad ghost king he knew, but rather another pale little ghost with a green flame on his head. So it seemed that Hua Chang had changed them into fake skins without Julian noticing. Thinking that he must be bearing a green flame upon his head as well, Julian couldn't help but raise a hand to feel around. Why must they change their appearance into something so bizarre? Although he trailed off, Hua Chang obviously knew what he wanted to say. I mentioned that the green ghost Qi Rong's tastes are vulgar. All of his lackeys have to dress like this. Julian hadn't expected Hua Chang to bring him to the green ghost Qi Rong's territory. Whenever the heavenly realm or the ghost realm mentioned green ghost Qi Rong, they all had to comment on how uncouth he was, and Julian couldn't fathom why. But now that he'd learned that all of his little ghost subordinates had to dress uniformly like this, he could finally understand somewhat. If he only judged him by that self-given title of his, there was some peculiar form of elegance to the sound of night-touring Green Lantern, but to literally have these green lanterns wandering around at night, there was indeed a gap between his initial impression and reality. "Didn't you already destroy his lair?" Julian asked. "I did, but he escaped," Hua Chang replied. "Escaped for 50 years and built a new one." Julian hugged the Long Chencho Budaweng doll close to his chest and, after making sure no one was around, whispered, "Sanlang, are you here to find the green ghost? Why don't you undo Chencho's spell and let him go before that? And then I'll accompany you." Hua Chang obstinately refused. "No, bring him with you. I need Long Chencho to meet someone." Julian was curious. Hua Chang didn't act like he cared much for Long Chencho, so why would he take him specially to meet anyone? But things were awkward on both sides, so he couldn't speak any more on the subject. When the two finally emerged from the cave and the tunnel opened to a wider space, only more caves appeared to greet them. There seemed to be caves and tunnels dug all over this mountain. Caves connecting caves, tunnels leading to more tunnels. Each entrance had many ghosts with green lanterns on their heads, going in and out, like a giant beehive or an anthill. If Julian had come in by himself, there was no way he'd remembered the path. And yet Hua Chang acted like he was at home and traversed the various tunnels and caves without hesitation, exceedingly at ease, like he knew the paths by heart. Yeah, he's probably had spies here, because the security is not exactly anything to write home about. The two of them both wore their little green-flamed ghost skins, so no one stopped them on their journey. Julian exhaled in relief, but Hua Chang thought he was sighing and asked, "What's wrong?" "Nothing," Julian said. "I thought you would attack the lair head-on instead of sneaking in. I'm not too good with fighting, so I'm relieved. He meant it when he said he wasn't good with fighting. While he was skilled in combat, he had trouble dealing with the aftermath. Huachang seemed to puff out a laugh. I did attack head-on the first time, but the moment Qi found out, he ran away, Huachang said. This time, I'm here for the ghost himself, so of course I can't have him notice I'm here. Is the green ghost the person who San Lang wants Lang Qinshuo to meet? Sholian wondered. Yes, that is correct. Is there a relationship between the two of them? Well, whatever he wants to do, I'll go with him. I'll ask him to undo the spell on Qinshuo later. Sholian still had the burning of Paradise Manor on his mind, so he couldn't help his guilty conscience. As he was thinking, Huachang spoke. That useless trash can't do anything, but he's very vigilant. These little ghosts can't get near him. And it's not easy to disguise oneself as the henchman he trusts. Okay, so he has a little bit more brains about him. There's only one way to get close to him. Just then, 4 little ghosts came by laughing and chatting. Huachang slowed his steps, and Sholian followed his lead. They saw that the little ghosts had a queue of bound humans behind them, dragged along by a long rope. Among the collection of humans, some were ragged and unkempt, and some wore extravagant clothes, but they all seemed to be young men and women under the age of 30. There was even a child, clutching the sleeves of one of the young men. They were probably father and son. Yeah, that's Gucci. That's Gucci. Yeah, I need to get a picture for him. I'll have to remember that. All of their hands were bound, each looking terrified and some even ready to faint as they trudged through the demonic cave. They brushed past Huachang, and without missing a beat, he turned around and seamlessly joined the end of the march. He gently elbowed Sholian, and he imitated Huachang's actions. When he looked over, Huachang had already changed skins again. This time, he was a clean-cut young man. Sholian knew he probably looked similar. He's not specifying that he took on his Sanlang form, so this is literally just a form. But I understand why the Donghua would use the Sanlang form, you know? I call it the Sanlang form, but like Sholian would describe it as something familiar if it was the same form that he was familiar with, you know? So I'm guessing he actually used a whole different disguise, which, sure, makes sense, I guess. The little band made twists and turns through the tunnels and caves. The little ghosts leading the group seemed quite content in their duties, and from time to time flaunted their meager authority, yelling and snarling at the prisoners behind them. No funny business, no crying. If you ruin the great ghost king's appetite with your faces all covered in tears and snot, we'll teach you what it's like to want to die. Out of the 4 great calamities, there had never been any rumors that the 3 supremes devoured human flesh. Only the green ghost Qi was gluttonous in this manner. No wonder his peers and enemies alike scoffed at any mention of him, mocking him as unsightly and ignorant. Earlier, Huachang said there was only one way to get close to the green ghost Qi. It appeared that mixing in with the food was the plan. As he walked, Sholian reached for Huachang's hand. Once he succeeded in grabbing hold of it, he felt Huachang freeze like he wanted to pull away. It wasn't that Sholian didn't notice, but given the circumstances, there wasn't much room for thought. He held Huachang's hand tight and lightly drew a word on his palm. Save. Since Sholian had seen their plight, he had to save these people. The gesture was meant to inform Huachang of his intentions. After the word was written, Huachang gently folded his fingers and closed his palm. A moment later, the group left the tunnel and made their way into a massive cave. As soon as they entered the cave, a mass of densely packed objects appeared in their vision. Sholian squinted up at them, not quite able to tell what those objects were, when he felt Huachang grip his wrist and draw a few words on the back of his palm. Watch your head, don't touch. At first, Shirley thought that there were many rags hanging from above, but when he looked closer, his pupils shrank. What rags? It was clearly a large crowd of densely packed people, suspended in mid-air with their feet up and heads down. The forest of upside-down corpses. But despite the suspended dead bodies, there was no bloody rain. It was because these corpses were all dried, not a drop of flesh blood left flowing in their veins. Those dried corpses all looked like they were in pain, their mouths open wide, and there was a thin layer of snow-like crystals on their bodies and faces. Salt. In the deeper recesses of the cave, the lights shone bright. There was a giant chair, a long table, golden goblets, and jaded utensils. Such extravagance made it look more like a royal banquet hall than a deep mountain cave. A bit further away from the long table, there was an enormous steel cauldron, big enough that more than 10 people could swim within. Red, boiling water bubbled in the cauldron. If anyone should accidentally fall in, it would be mere seconds before they were cooked through. 4 little ghosts ushered the group of prisoners towards the cauldron, but some fell to the ground, shivering in fear when they saw what was waiting for them. In the midst of all the yelling, hitting, pulling, and dragging, Shirley suddenly felt that beside him, Hua Chang's arm had gone stiff, and he'd stopped moving. He turned to look and saw that although Hua Chang still wore the appearance of a clean-cut young man, his eyes were blazing with rage. Hua Chang was always smiling, but Shirley knew that his true emotions were always hidden deep within. Shirley had never seen such violent, blatant fury in his eyes. He followed the line of Hua Chang's sight, and in the next moment he felt his own breath hitch. Before the giant, extravagant chair knelt a person, or so it seemed. But upon a closer look, it was actually a life-sized stone statue of someone. It was a rather interesting statue, sculpted in a kneeling position, its back facing him, its head downcast. It was the very picture of a homeless stray dog. One had to assume the only purpose of making such a statue was to humiliate its subject. And Shirley didn't need to turn the statue around to know its face must be exactly the same as his own. Generally, people don't know what their own backs looked like. But Shirley was different. He was more than familiar with how his own back looked. This is a terrible line, but it is such a good one. Oh my god. When the kingdom of Shanle first fell, to relieve themselves of anger, the people burned down his 8,000 crown prince temples. 8,000? Yeah, I know that they were commissioned by Daddy Dearest, but like, that's still 8,000 temples. That is, that's more than, that's like Fangxin now. Admittedly, Shillian was a little bit of a nepo baby. Like, I'm sure Fangxin had to work a little bit harder for his temples, but you know, still, that's a lot. Imagine if Shillian got to, you know, just continue amassing followers in other places as well. Yeah, holy shit. Anyway, so first they burnt down his 8,000 crown prince temples and desecrated all of his statues, stole the gems on their swords, and cleaned their attire of gold. Yet after all that, the rage continued to burn, and so they came up with a new idea, building kneeling statues like this one. The crown prince, once so highly venerated and worshipped, was sculpted into the form of one kneeling down and begging for forgiveness. These statues were placed in crowded areas of town, so everyone was free to spit at or kick them when they passed, and in doing so, rid themselves of misfortune. Worse, some even had him sculpted prostrating and used the statue directly as a threshold, so that tens of thousands would walk all over it. Oh my fucking god. In the first 10 or 20 years after the kingdom of Shanlo fell, those statues were a common sight in many cities and towns, and so, how could Shirley not recognize his own back? Just then, the voice of a young man said, "Oh my god, it's him, it's him, it's him. What do I do? What the fuck do we do?" That mangy little cur, Pei Shaw, had to cling to the leg of that man-whore dog, Pei, just to ascend in such a pitiful way. So who does he think he is? He's nothing more than an exiled stray right now, ruining my plans. Once I'm through with him, even after the winds dry up his corpse, no one will dare go collect it. Before the person himself had even appeared, they could already hear his insults. Shirley gazed over and saw a figure clad in green strut into the cave. Due to reasons not worth mentioning, Shirley couldn't help but look at the top of his head first. And he was actually kind of disappointed to see that the figure only had a mask on and no light above his head. yeah, Chirong himself does not have a candle on his head. Disappointing. A bunch of little ghosts dressed in green crowded around this green-clad man, and he stood there surrounded by a circle of green light. This had to be one of the ghost realm's 4 calamities, the green ghost Chirong. Ever since Nanfang had first mentioned the name, Shilian had kept it in the back of his mind, wondering if this Chirong was the same Chirong he knew. However, there was an unspoken rule that, demon or ghost, one was to hide their real name and bury their past life. Because of this, he didn't think they were the same person, only that the fake name had coincided with the real one. But from the looks of things, he was more than certain that this was the Chirong he remembered. How could there be a second Chirong who was obsessed with the statue of the kneeling crown prince, and why would his voice sound so familiar? The little green ghosts that surrounded Chirong were loudly proclaiming him king and talking all at the same time. Shilian figured out some of what had transpired from their chatter. It seemed that when Chirong sent a few of his henchmen to Ghost City, they failed to cause any havoc and were decimated by Hua Chang. He then regrouped and prepared to fight again, but before the second round had even started, the henchmen bumped into the exiled Pei Shaw on the road. Although exiled in the mortal realm, Pei Shaw nevertheless was once a heavenly official and also had nothing better to do. Thus, when those henchmen bumped into him, he thought he might as well clean them up. And so they were decimated once again. The moment Chirong received the news of how many henchmen he'd lost in such a short time, he was furious and started cursing non-stop. Like ancestor, like descendant, that damned man-whore Pei Ming probably has sores all over his crotch. I should chop off both his and Pei Shaw's rotten dicks and hang them at their temples. Then whoever worships them will bleed pus with every step just like them. Holy fucking shit. Shilian really had to suppress the urge to cover his ears. When Fangxin got upset, his curses were the same, also too vulgar for the ears, but as much as he saw, it was obvious that his were only words of temporary anger, with no real ill intent. Chirong's curses were different. Their targets could have no doubt that he truly wanted to condemn them to die as crudely as his curses, and he was wholly unafraid to take cheap shots, thoroughly crass and obscene. That group of little green ghosts agreed with Chirong loudly. He probably remembered the able subordinates he'd worked so hard to raise and continued, "Too bad that fiery good woman Xuanji was captured by those 2 shameless Pei curs and was wronged so miserably. She can't be saved even now." Shilian couldn't fully agree with those words. Indeed, Xuanji had a tragic story to tell, but not everything was General Pei's fault like Chirong described. After all, those 10 brides were kidnapped by Xuanji herself. 17! And she was the one who killed them in cold blood. Fiery for sure, but whether or not she was a good woman was debatable. But to say a little Pei on the ascendant because he kissed up to General Pei was something Shillian couldn't agree with at all. After seeing so many ascendant fall over the years, there was one thing Shillian could say with absolute certainty. The skilled may not always ascend, but the ascended are always skilled. If one was powerless, then no matter who promoted them, they would not be able to overcome their heavenly tribulation and could at most be an official in the middle court. The only other issue was that ability did not equal status, and that luck was also an important element. Otherwise, Pei Shuo would have established his own independent temple by now. I see. Obviously, those things weren't within the realm of consideration for Qi Rong. He saw like there wasn't a single person in the 3 realms he didn't want to curse to death. He called Pei Ming a rotten man-whore, Little Pei a kiss-ass, John Wu a faker, Ling Wen a damned bitch, Long Chencho a moron, Xuan Yizhen dog shit, the Watermaster black-hearted, the Windmaster a tramp. He probably didn't know Shi Qingxuan was actually a man. If Shillian wasn't seeing it now with his own 2 eyes, he wouldn't be able to believe... Oh my gosh, we have Qi Rong out. Anyone could be so resentful. And here he is, ladies and gentlemen. With the statue. Gotta say, this artist made him look kind of cute. He's a little modern looking in this one. Like he looks like he's actually wearing a t-shirt. Either way, finally Qi Rong made it to the main point, which was how Hua Chang and that lurking ship-sinking Blackwater looked down on him. They were mere supremes. One day, for sure, he'd make them kneel before him. Shillian knew he should be angry hearing this, but because it was impossible to imagine how that would even play out, he couldn't help but find it hilarious instead. He stole a glimpse at Hua Chang. Hua Chang himself didn't react, but was instead still staring at that kneeling stone statue. Yeah, he's triggered, Shillian. You might not understand this yet, but that's his switch. That's his kill switch. Finally, thank the gods, Qi Rong seemed to be assuaged by his tirade of abuse and changed the subject. How did that thing go that I sent you guys to do? Have Xuan Yizhen and that man-whore Pei started fighting yet? He sat down as he spoke, lounging on his luxurious throne. He raised his legs and rested his boots on the shoulder of the statue, using it as a footstool. Shillian had been holding on to Hua Chang's arms and stopped him immediately when he felt him shuffle a step forward. He worried that his tug might not be enough, so he drew another word in Hua Chang's palm. Thanks. Hua Chang recognized the word. He lowered his head and glanced at Shillian, who was watching him with gratefulness in his eyes, thanking him for his good intentions. Then Shillian shook his head lightly and drew the words, listen and heaven. Judging by Qi Rong's talk, it seemed he sent some henchmen to complete the task, and it had something to do with those 2 heavenly officials. It couldn't be anything good, so Shillian had to keep listening. As for the statue getting used as a footstool, considering he'd been used as a threshold before, this really meant nothing to Shillian. It was only a piece of rock, not really him. Although he had only written those 3 simple words, when their eyes met, Shillian knew Hua Chang had understood their meaning. Hua Chang slowly gripped his hand tight and turned his head away, so Shillian could no longer see his expression. I do like the casual hand-holding, guys. A little green ghost spoke up. We followed our king's instructions and spread the rumors that Pei Ming wants to make Pei Shuo the martial god of the West. Oh, okay, yeah, that is a rumor we have heard before. It's becoming more and more of a riot by the day, so we used that as an excuse and desecrated hundreds of Mingguang temples disguised as devotees from the palace of Qi Ying. And no one was the wiser. Haha, my king may not know, But all his devotees are really stupid. They saw us smashing temples and smashed along with us. With even more enthusiasm. What? Oh my god. So Qi Ying, the devotees of Qi Ying did the same? Is that what they were saying? That the Qi Ying devotees joined the ghosts devotees? I guess. Qirong approved. Keep fueling them. Xuan Yizhen can endure it, but I refuse to believe that Manhor Pei can put up with it. Even if the rumors they were spreading weren't exactly false, malicious talk like this was still full of ill intent. Especially Vile was doing something as unscrupulous as disguising themselves as mortals to sabotage temples and incite discontent. No wonder that whenever Qirong was mentioned, everyone in the heavens said that although he wasn't that capable, he was truly extremely annoying. Shelian noted mentally, if there's a chance, do tell John Wu to watch for any discord between those two heavenly officials that others might have sown. When Qirong finished talking business, he lay back, and his long legs resting on the statue changed positions. The little ghosts immediately knew what to do and went to the small band of humans to pick out the best cuts. The one child in the group was probably not even 10 years of age and wasn't very aware of his predicament. He blinked his large eyes and held on tight to his father's shirt, tugging at it the more scared he became. His young father's face was ashen pale, shuddering while trying to comfort him. Don't be scared, don't be scared. Yet it was obvious he himself was terrified to the bone. One of the little green ghosts saw there was a child and was delighted, reaching out to grab him. The young father yelped and jolted. Shelian started moving before he knew what he was going to do, but then he felt the figure next to him dart out. Shelian turned his head to see, and Hua Chang had stepped out from within the crowd. Since Hua Chang had come specifically to seek out the green ghost, he should have lifted his disguise now that he'd found Qirong. Shelian had no doubt that Hua Chang was powerful enough to destroy everything in sight, and all would be powerless to stop him. Yet Hua Chang did not reveal his true form and maintained the skin of that normal-looking young man as he lazily walked forward. A number of little green ghosts raised their weapons and shouted in alarm. "Stop! What are you doing?" Qirong asked curiously, with his feet still up. "What's with that guy? Seize him!" Hua Chang laughed. "Won't you all show a little respect in the presence of Shanle royalty?" Qirong wasn't the only one shocked by those words. Even Shelian was taken aback. Instantly after, Qirong shot to his feet and snorted beneath his mask as if he had laughed out of sheer anger. "What fucking audacity to make such a joke before me? Tell me then, what branch of the Shanle royalty are you from? Which one?" Hua Chang replied leisurely, "Prince Anle." Shelian felt the Longchen Cho Budawang doll in his arms jerk once. Prince Anle was a descendant of Shanle royalty from the same generation as Longchen Cho. He was even said to have been friends with Longchen Cho. Qirong's derisive laugh could be heard from under the mask. "Prince Anle, I think you're seeking your own death. Who told you to start shit in front of me? The person who sent you didn't teach you any history? Prince Anle was the last of the royal family of Shanle, and that family died out with him. Who are you to pretend to be Shanle royalty before me?" Hua Chang raised his brow. "Oh? Died out? How?" Qirong shouted. "Seize him! Seize that weird guy!" At his command, a large number of little green ghosts poured in from all around the cave, yelling. In the middle of that pandemonium, Hua Chang only smirked faintly. His expression had been nonchalant, but in a moment, it was like a layer of frost had fallen upon his face. His form suddenly flickered and disappeared, then reappeared in a blink behind Qirong. He grabbed the back of Qirong's head with one hand and smacked it down hard like a child playing with a ball. I can't tell who's saying this next sentence. Is it Qirong? And who the fuck are you to be so insolent before me? It's Qirong, right? A loud bang, and that magnificent throne was suddenly hidden by flying debris, with dust filling the air. Sholian tugged a young child behind his body to shield him and blocked a few small flying rocks. When the dust settled, Qirong had disappeared. But on closer inspection he hadn't disappeared. Rather, his entire head was deeply embedded in the ground after Hua Chang's strike. Humans and ghosts alike screamed and dispersed. "Don't run away!" Sholian shouted. If the people alerted all the ghosts within the cave, they'd be killed for sure. But of course, as always, no one listened to him. Sholian dropped his hands helplessly. In these circumstances, he had no time to worry about others. Across the cave, Hua Chang slowly knelt down. He used one hand to grab a fistful of Qirong's hair and pried his bloodied head out of the large hole in the ground. With that motion, the body was extracted along with it. After a brief moment of observation, Hua Chang seemed extremely amused and burst out laughing. Although he was laughing, the light in his eyes was off by 1,000,000 watts, eerie and terrifying. Roya flew out and struck away a few of the little green ghosts who were trying to cut down the escaping humans. Sholian turned his head, his instincts telling him that something was wrong. "Sanlang? Sanlang!" Qirong's mask cracked, a few fragments falling. He spat up a mouthful of blood and yelled, "Somebody stop him! All of you, come and stop him!" Hua Chang had been violently bashing him about earlier, but now he seemed at ease, ready to have a chat about anything and everything. He snickered. "Oh, didn't you know? There are some things in this world that are unstoppable. Like, for example, the sun setting in the west, or an elephant squashing an ant. Or me taking your damned life." By his last line, his expression was unabashedly savage, and he raised Qirong's whole body high before smashing him into the ground once more. Another loud bang. Qirong's body was splayed on the ground, pulped into something worse than mush. With a soft crack, the mask on his face shattered into fragments, revealing half his face. If anyone were to see that half, they'd discover a shocking fact. The green ghost Qirong and the crown prince of Chandler, one ghost, one god, the difference between hell and heaven, looked astonishingly alike. Are they seriously that similar? Okay, anyway, that was the end of chapter 21. And also the 50 pages that I had wanted to read. Holy shit. Yeah, that was a lot more happened over those 50 pages than I suppose I should have expected it. Things should have been picking up, considering how we only have 60 pages left of season 2, you know? Also, it got a lot darker here. Because again, I spent too much time filming this. But holy shit, that was fun for one. It was a lot of fun. And we learned a lot of like miscellaneous information. I think the biggest surprise for me this time around was definitely the sword. The sword's name is Fangxin. And certainly there are some implications here. Again, I already kind of had this discussion when we were watching the Donghua, but we don't actually know where the sword is from just yet. And I mean, if he named himself after the sword, I guess it's more likely now that Sholian had the sword before he became state preceptor, and it wasn't a sword given to him as he became the state preceptor, right? I mean, there's still a possibility. I'll keep it open for now, but I'm leaning more towards he probably had it before then. And importantly, Hua Chang reacted to the sword. Hua Chang reacted to the fucking sword. So that means one of two things to me. He was reacting when the sword kind of made that moaning sort of sound. So one, it could mean that that moaning sort of sound really is as disturbing as it seemed, and Hua Chang is kind of tuned into it. Like, he knows that this blade is something ominous-ish. Like, it's not great, it's not good. Or 2, he recognizes it. Could this be a sword that originates in the Chandler sort of past, and it's a sword that Shillian's carried with him? I don't know. Like, I feel like like, I don't know. We don't have any evidence of that just now. So I'm leaning more towards just this sword having this. It's weird, right? It's not just cool. It seems like it's a bit ominous, right? I didn't really, like, yeah, I guess you kind of got the vibe a little bit from the Donghua, but not as much as they're kind of pushing it in the book right now. Like, this shit is, it's weird. It's really weird. And it has a little bit of that, like, ominous personality as well. Like, this is not a cute sword. This is not Ming. So Fangxin the sword, I'm gonna have to give a think to that one. We have to think a little bit more about Fangxin. Loved me a little bit of the Chandler trio reprise, like a little bit more of that like insight into what's happened with them in the past. The conversation was basically the same as in the Donghua. I didn't discern any new information. However, it's nice to kind of have this novel perspective on Mooching, who I think is more difficult to portray in the Donghua. Like, he like the nuance that a book can bring is something that he definitely needs. A change I did notice is that we don't know if Mooching made the dice. It's not explicitly said anywhere. So maybe it's confirmed later, or maybe it's not mentioned at all. Maybe it's something that the Donghua did change. And the same with the just the way the little ghosts look. They do not look like little ghosts in the Donghua. I don't know how I'd imagine or want to imagine this to look if I made it. Like, maybe not make all the ghosts like big, burly, green, blue things. Like, maybe more lanky and creepy in that way. I don't know. I just imagine these ghosts very differently from what we saw in the Donghua. Though Chirong's design in the Donghua was amazing. Love it. And I guess, yeah. There are some similarities between him and Shillian. Like, he is supposed to look pretty, right? He is a little cute. Because he's related to the most beautiful man in the world. Facts. I'm okay with that. I'll survive with that. I'll live. What I won't live with is the fact that there were no new Guggers, because we still haven't reconciled. Hualien still hasn't had their conversation, which is gonna be the next part after we get out the truth from Chirong and then escape his cave. Yeah, we have more to do. There's more to do. But no new Gagas this time around, which is unfortunate for us, unfortunate for me personally. Oh well. I do love that we get that flashback from Shillian's perspective, and that he does tell us a little bit about just Fangxin as the state preceptor. That he intentionally made this character who's cold and a little bit scary to everyone. And I love that detail that Lang Chensho just... Yeah, he is scared as well, but he forgets that he is scared because he's so in awe and admires his teacher, his Shifu, so much. On that note, I'm just guessing Shifu means master. You'll have to correct me on that, but I made a very educated guess from my knowledge of fucking Kung Fu Panda. And again, when Shillian noticed that, well, Hua Chang has managed to connect his teleportation array to the door of the Palace of Chandler, he remarks upon how surely you must have been a heavenly official to make that work. Hua Chang has the cooperation of a heavenly official. I think this, again, is a clue about the Earthmaster thing that I keep talking about. That's gotta be it. Okay, so I had a little bit of a break in between, but I've been filming for literally 5 hours now, which is a lot longer than I thought I would be. And I think that my brain will work better if I do get myself some food. So I'm gonna end our discussions here and just be excited about the fact that I think I have one more reading session, a long-ass reading session of about 60 pages to get through. And once I'm through with those 60 pages, that should be the end of Arc 1. Gonna double check that for you guys right now. 61 pages, which is totally doable. So that's my plan anyway. I have no idea when I'll be able to finish this video. I'll be working on it tomorrow for sure, but the day after I am back to work. So you'll see it when you see it. I'll probably be already deep in the capitalist grind. But I'm excited to share this with you, to share the new information that I've seen, and also my ramblings and theories. And I hope you'll enjoy them. So before we end the tallies, no new Gegas for the Gega tally. One more Laugh or Cry for the Laugh or Cry tally. So we are up to a total of 10 Laugh or Cries, 3 in volume 2, 10 altogether in the story so far. And that's for the ellipsis tally. We had quite a few for others, a lot of the Heavenly Officials ellipses, and a few for Shellyan as well. So we're at a total of 15 for volume 2 for Shellyan, and 42 for Shellyan altogether, while others climbs up to a total of 6 ellipsis replies. And that's it from me, slowly inching my way closer to the unknown. So thank you for joining me for this read along. This has been Amelia, aka Puffin, and I will see you in the next one.